Welcome back. Let's dive right into today's explainer, where we're continuing our ongoing exploration of the mind. Now, if you've been following along with our earlier discussions on the architecture of human awareness, you know we spent a ton of time analyzing exactly how our minds hold on to things. But today, we're flipping the script. We are going to look at the exact opposite. We're exploring the mechanics of how the mind releases things through this really fascinating framework that we're calling the orbital mechanics of letting go.
Part 1. The necessity of letting go. Creating mental space.
Before we get into the actual mechanics, we really need to isolate exactly why we have to let go in the first place. You know, Eastern philosophies like Hinduism and Buddhism have taught for centuries that releasing old attachments is an absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for inviting anything new into our experience. We've touched on this before, right? The whole idea that you literally cannot fill a cup that is already full. To actually create the mental and emotional space for new things, new experiences, new perspectives, new feelings to enter your life, those old things just have to be released first.
But that brings us to the million-dollar question. What is the exact process of letting go? The really crucial point here is understanding not just the high-level philosophy, but the actual mechanical process of how letting go happens inside the mind. I mean, we hear the phrase, just let it go all the time, don't we? But without a mechanical understanding of what that actually means, it's kind of just an empty platitude. We need a real system, a functional model, to understand exactly what is going on in our heads when we successfully release a thought.
Which brings us to Part 2, recapping our established awareness thought space model.
To really answer this, let's come back to that awareness thought space model we've been working with. Remember from our previous explainers that an observer is simply defined as the core concentration center of your awareness. Basically, you are the observer. Your fundamental awareness, that absolute center point of your attention and consciousness, acts as an anchor in your mental space. Keep this definition firmly in the back of your mind, because the observer is the central engine for literally everything we're about to discuss today.
And this brilliantly illustrates our established laws of mental physics. Think of it like this. Your awareness behaves exactly like gravity. But instead of pulling in physical matter like planets or stars do, it pulls in thoughts. We've discussed this before. Thoughts don't just sit statically in your mind. They actually orbit around the concentration centers of awareness. They are literally orbiting around you, the observer, because your attention has a very real gravitational pull.
Moving on to Part 3, the mechanics of suffering. This is what happens when thoughts get a little too close. Let's see how this builds into the actual mechanics of what we experience as emotional pain. Because once you understand that thoughts are orbiting your awareness like satellites around a planet, you can really start to see where the system might experience some dangerous instability. Think about it. When an observer becomes too attached to a specific thought, the connection between that thought and the core structure becomes entirely too strong, and as a result, the orbital distance shrinks dangerously close to the core. So instead of a healthy orbit where the thought maintains a nice, safe, observable distance, the attached orbit pulls the thought in incredibly tight. It starts scraping against the core structure, generating a massive amount of friction.
And in our everyday, normal terms, this internal mechanical friction is exactly what we call suffering. When a thought's orbit reduces and literally grinds against your core awareness because you're overly attached to it, well, that generated friction is the emotional pain, the anxiety, or the persistent distress that you feel. It is, quite literally, a physics problem happening right inside your awareness thought space.
All right, Part 4, breath as the core. Here is the biological solution.
Now, if suffering is caused by an attached thought orbiting way too closely and creating all that friction, how do we push it back? How do we actually break that gravitational pull? Well, as we've discussed in our foundational explainers, the physical breath serves as the literal core of the observer's concentration center. Your breath is so much more than just a basic biological function. Within the awareness thought space, it is the absolute anchor point of your awareness. It is the very center of your gravitational field.
By shifting your concentration back onto the breath, the observer takes immediate mechanical action. When the observer turns its concentration to its breath, meaning becoming entirely aware of its own breathing, that is precisely what releases the line of thought currently under consideration. You are effectively taking your gravitational energy away from that orbiting thought and yanking it right back into the center. Deprived of that strong gravitational connection, the thought's tight orbit is finally released.
Let's wrap this up with Part 5, redefining letting go and putting it all together.
Okay, so we've mapped out the philosophy, the spatial model, the exact cause of the friction, and the tool we use to break it. Let's lock this in with a definitive statement. The source material defines letting go perfectly.
It states that for an observer to concentrate its awareness on the core center of its being, thereby breaking the connection with the thought or emotion at hand, is what letting go actually is. It's a highly active, mechanical shift. You aren't just magically forgetting something. You are actively concentrating your awareness on your core center, your breath, which instantly and deliberately severs the connection with that tightly orbiting, friction-causing thought.
And doing this triggers just a beautiful chain reaction. First, you focus your awareness on the breath. Second, that specific action breaks the tight connection with the thought. Third, by regularly disrupting these connections, your attachments will naturally fade over time. And fourth, as those attachments fade and drift out of your orbital space altogether, you successfully allow for entirely new thoughts and emotions to occur within your mental space. You have officially, mechanically, created the room required for new experiences.
So now that you know the exact orbital mechanics needed to clear your mind, we are left with the most exciting question of all. By mastering your own mental gravity, by intentionally using your breath to release the thoughts causing you friction and suffering, what are you going to allow into your newly created space? What new thoughts, emotions, and experiences will you invite into a healthy orbit? I will leave you to ponder that one. I absolutely can't wait to continue building on this model with you next time.